those of you here who celebrated the Feast of Shavuot about 6 months ago at Emmanuel's School in Wilford, you would have seen an amazing sight. Can you remember? You can remember. Put your hand up if you were there. Okay, lots of you. Amazing sight. Dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of people coming forward to have their ministry and their calling affirmed and confirmed in the presence of Yahweh Almighty. Now, some of you may not have been aware of this. You may not have known this. But that occasion was an important landmark in the body of Messiah, where you are concerned. Huge landmark for us, for you. It wasn't just about people coming up, stepping up and receiving a certificate and, having a handshake and an embrace from some leaders. It wasn't about that at all. It wasn't about you and I getting this certificate that we could say, I've got it now. It wasn't about that. It was about people saying, whatever has happened in the past is in the past. I now commit myself to your service. We were speaking. We were sharing with him through the action of coming forward. We were saying that to him. It happened 6 months ago. The year running up to that was probably the most significant period in my life for I don't know how long. It was an extremely significant point in my life, and it was an important thing that I engaged in. That year we conducted what has come to be known as Operation Restore. We had consultations, we had meetings and spent time with dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of ministers. We shared with them. They shared with myself and others. And through that, we began to discover where people were at. And people were discovering where they were at. Because over that period of time, we were seeking the Heavenly Father. And in speaking to a range of people, particularly elders and deacons, I discovered something. I believe that Yahweh spoke to me, made it clear to me that some things needed to be looked at. You see, where elders and deacons are concerned, I think for some time we have missed the mark. We have not seen it and understood it as it should have been seen and understood. In talking to a range of people, I understood that elders and deacons seem to be operating not here, but here. Why? Because of the understanding that they had. And that's why this feast has been so important. Because our service cannot be raised to a level of excellence if our understanding of our ministry is not clear and at the level that it should be. We only serve at the level to which our understanding takes us. The whole purpose of Operation Restore was to bring us all to the place where our hearts and our lives were renewed and our commitment to Him was on fire and our passion for service was red hot. And plugged into there also was that we might have clarity about who we are, what He has made us, and what He wants us to do here and now. That was the whole purpose. And so, on the back of those thoughts, I want to ask you and I to rethink this evening local church leadership. And here's my thought. I'm throwing it straight up there, right at the outset to you. The original pattern for local church leadership is elders and deacons. And I believe when we recover this pattern, we will have a better understanding of how ministerial giftings in the body should work together to fulfill Yahweh's purpose in the earth. But we need to understand this part. And then the others will drop into place. We will begin to appreciate how the other giftings work together to do the business of building the church. So this is important. So, in recovering the original pattern, first, we need to recognize what we currently have, what is currently in place and working. 2, we must discover what it was like in earlier times. And 3, take practical steps to adopt the original pattern into our structure going forward. You see, there's no point in understanding something if you don't do something with it. Okay. Has it always been like this? The short answer is no. It hasn't always been like this. But I'd like us to just take a little moment to have a look at how it is now, what we have now. Now, for local congregations to thrive, they need to have 3 key things in place. 1, an unshakable commitment to Yeshua's commission. And we know that that is framed for us or summarized for us in Matthew 28, verse 19-20. Yes? It's there. That's the first thing that we need to have in place. Second, a clear and compelling vision that members are fully engaged in. Third, we must have a strong biblical leadership. Now, we are so, sorry, let's rephrase that. We spend so much time focusing on the mission, the commission. And that's important. It's right. It's absolutely necessary. And then we spend huge amounts of energy and focus on the vision. And that's absolutely necessary. Because without a vision, we're not going anywhere. We just go around in circles. We don't achieve, yes? So those two things are absolutely important. And they are linked. However, in the same way that we give time and energy and focus and consideration to mission and vision, we must also be clear about what biblical leadership of the local congregation looks like and who makes it up. We must be clear. What we have now for most churches, that leadership appears as vicar, priest, pastor. We're all familiar with this type of leadership. And these are great. There's nothing wrong. I'm not suggesting that there's anything wrong with that at all. Right? These guys and lasses, they are seen as professionals. They are ordained. They have also a few people supporting them. And these people are made up from the laity, what is said to be the laity. They are not ordained. They're non-professionals. They're not called to minister to the congregation in specific areas. But these guys, they come alongside and they support. Yes? They support the vicar, support the priest, they support the pastor. My question is, where does the elder and the deacon fit into this? See, much has been written and much has been said about these two roles, elders and deacons. And there's also been an awful lot misinterpreted about the role of these two people and how they actually play out in the church, or if indeed they are functioning or should function in the church today. He looks like a nice fellow, doesn't he? But he's not he's a pastor. He's recognized as such, and he's a professional. Now, in thinking about the elder, let's just focus for a little bit. In the first instance, the term elder refers to, and rightly so, refers to an older person who has gained much experience and accumulated wisdom over the years he or she has lived. Now, such people have great respect in the congregation. We're talking about the congregation, yes? They have great respect in the congregation, and their guidance and wisdom is invaluable. However, I am not speaking about the mature, the aged, the senior. I am not focusing on that. Although, like I said, the term elder, refers to such individuals. I am speaking about church leadership, right? Now, the role of elders is widely different across the church world. In some churches, they are ordained. In other churches, they're not. In some churches, they have a hands-on role in the work and administration of the church. In others, they don't. In some churches, they form the governing body of the church. In some churches, they don't. Equally, the deacons have differing roles in church organizations. In some cases, the deacon is seen as a step towards being ordained to the priesthood. And the task of the deacon is seen by most churches as administering charitable works, caring for the needs of the poor, and distributing the bread and the wine at communion. What about the congregation of Yahweh? What is the current position? What is the state of play in the congregation of Yahweh where elders and deacons are concerned? Let me give it to you from my perspective. What I see, what I observe. In the congregation of Yahweh, the elder is seen as someone who supports the senior shepherd. Actually, let me embarrass some people here. I'm going to ask you to raise your hand if you are an elder. Not necessarily I'm not talking about the aged person, the one who has accumulated wisdom over the years, but if you have been recognized as an elder, yes? Can you raise your hand? Come on, let me just see those hands go up. All right? Elder. Okay, I'm going to pick on you, Brother Earl. But you would like to stand up? That's an elder. Look, see? He's in the middle. Yeah, he's got some grey, but he's still got that youthful look about him, hasn't he? Yeah, that's an elder. Thank you. Now, the elder, as far as I can see in the congregation of Yahweh, is someone who supports the senior shepherd and team. Someone who is maybe part of the shepherding team. Someone who prays for the sick. And I hear this often among us. People will come to the front here for prayer. They're sick, and we say, let's call for the elders. And the elders will come forward and lay hands on the sick, anoint them with oil, and they're healed. I mean, that's amazing. That's what happens. Elders pray for the sick, and they are healed. The elder is someone who is involved in pastoral care. They go out and they meet people, and they care for people, and they support people. And Brother Earl, he is, is one of those people. He does that extremely well with his dear wife. Now, all those tasks are very, very, very important. But the question that I want to ask is that the heart and the extent of what the elder is called to do? That's the question. And my answer is no. My answer is no. The deacon, okay, have we got any deacons in here? Raise your hand. Raise your hand if you're a deacon. Deacon, okay, right? Deacons, don't be bashful. Put your hand up, yeah? Okay. Now, remember we're speaking about the congregation of Yahweh at this point. The deacon is seen as someone who is responsible for the fabric of the church building. Dealing with all the stuff that we can see. The deacon is someone who puts the chairs out for meetings. The deacon is someone who is employed as caretaker. Another word for that is warden, yes? The deacon is someone who counts the offering. The deacon is someone who is frequently on the ushering team and other things. All these things, all these tasks, they are very important. They are necessary. But is that the heart and the extent of what the deacon is called to do? The answer is no. Okay, that's the status quo. That's how things are. And if you disagree with me, that's absolutely fine. Yes? If you don't feel that that is how things are or how they appear, that's fine. I've said I'm giving it to you from my perspective. Right? Okay, let's go on. What was it like in the beginning? I want to go on to look at the local church leadership in the early congregation. What did it look like in the time of the apostles? Now, I want to first speak about spiritual gifts. Dastley on Tuesday, Tuesday, was it? Spoke to us about the diversity of gifts that heaven has given to the body of Messiah. And they all come to us as spiritual gifts, as gifts of grace. Grace, or rather gifts, that we receive through the favor of Yahweh. Gifts. Spiritual gifts. Now, as Dastley ministered to us, these gifts are outlined in 1 Corinthians 12, Romans 12, and John spoke to us on Sabbath yesterday on leadership. It's one of those gifts from Romans chapter 12. And we also have in Ephesians chapter 4, again, a number of gifts. And these gifts are divine enablements bestowed upon you and I, bestowed upon people right across the body to enable the body to do the purpose for which it is here. Amazing. Yeshua, Yahweh has established his body, his church here. It has a purpose, and he has, or they have resourced the church to do what it's supposed to do. Gifts. The apostle Peter he says, we all have gifts. Yeah? Serve each other according to the gift each person has received as good managers of Yahweh's diverse gifts. We all have gifts. Gifts comes with being a part of the body of Messiah. If you're a part of the body, then you will be bestowed gifts. Because you have something to do in the kingdom. You have something to do in the body of Messiah. If you sit in this space and you have a sense that you are born again and you're a part of Messiah's body, then you have been given a gift that flows from Yahweh's favor. That gift is for you to do ministry. It's for you to do ministry. And brothers and sisters, gifts are for today. There are people who might say to you that gifts of the Spirit, gifts that flow from Yahweh, many of those, they ceased with the first apostles. But the Scriptures don't tell me that. The Scriptures tell me, actually, that these gifts are here all the time that the body of Messiah is here, because the body of Messiah in every generation, in every age, must pursue maturity. And the gifts that are given are to assist with that. So they are here today for us to receive. So, in context of ministry, that is, what we do in and for Messiah and his body, we are all ministers. Every single one of us are ministers. Joel, you stood here. My friend, you are a minister. That's a bit strange being said to you, someone so young. But you are a minister in the body of Messiah. And you should be proud of that. To be a minister in the body of Messiah. We are all ministers, and we all have gifts through which we minister and serve. But in terms of leading the congregation, what do the Scriptures show us? We're all ministers. We all function. We all have something to do. But in terms of leading the congregation, what do we see? Well, soon after the church began to spread and grow, we begin to see evidence of a local leadership in place. Now, that was essentially a team of elders and deacons. Leadership of the local church has always been a team thing. It's never been about one individual who's set up to run the show. It's always been a team of people who lead a local congregation. And we know the dangers that can be experienced if you have one person who is there, should we say, in charge. Yeah? It's team leadership. Now, elders as leaders is not an invention of the early church. Yeah? Not an invention of the early church. Israel of old had leaders who were over the people. From the time of Moses right through to the New Testament, we see this. Yes? You read the Scriptures. You read the various accounts through the history of Israel, and you will see elders in place, overseeing the people, governing the people. Yes? It's there, not a New Testament invention. So, when we come to this new covenant community that Yeshua left and empowered, it was natural for them to actually use that age-old model that's there, elders. It actually operated in the synagogues. Yeah? Elders. In Acts chapter 15, we see that it was the 12 apostles and the elders who met together to deal with an issue that was to have a huge impact on the growing community. We see that whenever Paul and Barnabas planted a fellowship on their missionary journey, they put in place elders. Yeah? A good scripture you can note down is Acts 14:23. That gives us the picture of Saul and Barnabas going missionary journey, planting churches, setting elders in place. We also see the Apostle Paul calling together the elders of the church at Ephesus to give them a farewell pep talk. And we find this in Acts chapter 20. Yeah. The role of elders, brothers and sisters, I want to say to us, has its roots in the faith of Yahweh's covenant people, Israel. Yeah, that's where it comes from. Yeah. Okay, want to have a look at the meaning of elders and deacons. Let's begin with elder. In the New Testament, the elder comes from a Greek word, presbyteros. Presbyteros. And some of you might be familiar, or that word has a familiar ring. Presbyterian. Yes? Okay. Now, the elder in the New Testament was also called bishop, from the Greek episkopos, yes, which means overseer. And again, that word has a familiar ring. Yeah? Episkopos. Episcopalian. Yeah? And here we have it, yes? We have different parts of the Protestant church, yes, that is actually governed in different ways. And it comes down to elder and bishop. Yes? The Presbyterian churches, the governing body or the governance of the church is related to the elder, the presbyteros. The Episcopalian, it comes down to the bishop idea. Yeah? Now, the Apostle Paul, in Acts 20, verse 17 and 28, and Titus 1, verses 5 and 7, uses those two terms interchangeably. Yes? Can you read that? Paul sent to Ephesus for the elders, presbyteros, of the church. It says, guard yourselves and all the flock which the Holy Spirit has made you overseers. Episkopos. Yes? These two terms are used there in referring to the same people or persons. Yes? That's important for us to understand. Now, in Paul's eyes, there was no difference between those two. Actually, it was only when the church was institutionalized under Constantine, when the church was made part and parcel of the state, that we began to see a separation of those two. Elders, yes, and bishops. But essentially, in the beginning, in the scriptures, they were one and the same. That's important for us to understand. That's how the early congregation saw it. That's what they practiced. Yeah? Okay, sorry. Let's not go there yet. Okay, let's think about the role of the elder. The role of the elder was oversight of the congregation. They were to rule and guide the people, the body. They were to shepherd the flock of Yahweh. This was essentially their role, oversight. ruling, guiding, shepherding. Yeah. The meaning of deacon. Deacon comes from the Greek word diakonos. Deacons are servants. Servants of Messiah and servants of his people, of his body. Now, in Acts chapter 6, verses 1 to 7, we have an account of the first deacons. The first deacons, they're actually in the New Covenant community, they come on stream. Yeah? And they assisted the apostles. And we know the issue that arose that caused that to happen. It was enacted on the first day of the feast by the Northeast congregation in an explosion of ministry. The deacons assisted the apostles so that the apostles could get on and do the work that they were called to do. And after that, the deacons continued their service in assisting the senior leaders, the elders. Used in a technical way, the deacon is a minister who assists. Yeah. That's the deacon. Elders and deacons, they are appointed. They're not gifts in the same way that we get the apostles, the prophets, the pastors, the teachers. They're not gifts in the same sense as the gift of leadership, gift of mercy. They're not gifts of grace. Are you with me? Elders and deacons are appointed. And before they're appointed, they are selected. Selected and appointed. They are not gifts of grace. The elder and the deacon are positions or functions to which individuals are appointed, as indicated by Paul in his letter to Timothy. 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1. Can somebody get that? Three verse 1.
Here is a trustworthy saying: if anyone sets his heart on being an overseer, he desires a noble task.
Yes. Whoever aspires to be an overseer desires a noble task. Yes. It's a function. Yeah? Task. It's a noble thing that you desire to be an overseer. And an overseer is episcopus, yes? And we're saying that episcopus and presbyteros are one and the same. Yeah? Let's try and keep that in our minds. So it is a noble task. And it is an appointment. It is not a gift of divine grace. And that chapter actually goes on to roll out some qualifications that we're going to look at in a moment. Yes? Okay. Now, the first deacons, they were selected based on certain requirements needed to undertake a given task in the congregation. And it was one of supervision. Yes? The first deacons, they were to supervise the distribution of the daily supplies that the congregation needed. Supervision. Let's keep that in mind. Titus was left in Crete, and we find this in Titus chapter 1. Titus was left in Crete in the main to establish a credible leadership for the local churches. And this he did by appointing and putting into place elders. You can read it for yourself when you go home. So, recognizing that elders and deacons are positions of leadership to which individuals are selected and appointed, it is probable that those elders and deacons, they had gifts of grace. Yeah? It is possible and probable that those deacons that functioned in the early church, some of them were pastors. Some of them had the gift of pastor. Some of them had the gift of administration. Some of them had the gift of helps. Some of them had the gift of evangelist. Yes, they had gifts of grace, but they were appointed to the leadership of the local congregation. Are you with me so far? Okay. And the same can be said of the deacon. We'll talk a little bit more about the deacon. But what was important was not necessarily the gift of grace that they had in their lives, that was imparted to them. What was important and what was necessary was the qualifications, the moral characteristics, yes, necessary for leadership. That was what was absolutely necessary. So, we can go further. If elders and deacons were appointed to a position, to a function, it follows that deacons and elders, yes, are not so for life. If I could be appointed an elder of a local church, and I serve for a period of time. It could be 5 years, it could be 10 years. And at the end of that, I step out of the eldership. I am no longer an elder. But nevertheless, it can be chalked up on my CV. You know what? I served that congregation as an elder for 10 years. That is one area of church ministry that can change. The gift of grace that is given to me, that never changes. Nobody takes that away from me. But the fact that I can be appointed to a position, it follows that I can step out, or I can be asked to step out of that position. You follow? Okay. So, once an elder or deacon doesn't mean always elder, deacon. Let's look at some qualifications, and these are just going to come up. I'm just going to mention a few, right? You become an elder or deacon by being chosen by leaders with some collaboration with senior members of the church. The choice is based on exhibited qualities by the prospective candidate. Qualifications for elders and deacons are exhaustive and impressive. Yeah, and let's just feast your eyes on that. Yeah, you've got to be hospitable. You've got to be able to teach. This is an elder, yes? Not violent, but gentle. Not quarrelsome, not lover of money, not a recent convert. You have a good reputation with outsiders. You're not overbearing. You're not quick-tempered. How many people ruled themselves out already? You're upright. You're holy. You're disciplined. Yeah? Now, we're moving on to qualifications that apply to both elder and deacon. You are blameless. The husband of one wife. Does that mean if you don't aspire to be an elder, you can have more than one wife? I don't know. Temperate, respectable, not given to drunkenness. Manages his own family well. Sees that his children obey him. Does not pursue dishonest gain. Keeps hold of deep truths. This just applies to the deacon, sincere, tested. And they are some of the qualifications, some of the qualities that are necessary. Now, the list that we've just looked at, if we tot it up, we will find that there are 22 conditions. Yeah? And 22 of those conditions apply to the elder. And 11 applies to the deacon. Yeah? Double. The deacon carries twice the amount. The elder carries twice the amount as the deacon. Yeah? Interesting. Now, in the same way that the scripture points to a relationship between apostles and prophets, and we see this in Ephesians, and other places, that the congregation is actually built on the foundation of the apostles and the prophets. Yeah, there's a relationship, yes? The scriptures point to a relationship between elders and deacons, yeah? There's a working relationship. Elders and deacons work together. Paul, in his writing, 1 Timothy 3, outlines, as we've looked at, the conditions for elders. And he goes on to pick up the deacon using the word likewise. All these things are required for the elder. Likewise, these things are required from the deacon. So it suggests that there is this working relationship between the two. Now, further evidence is found in Philippians chapter 1, verse 1. Paul is addressing his letter to the congregation and to its leaders. You can look at this. Turn to in your Bibles, Philippians chapter 1, verse 1, and you read it there, and it's speaking, or it's addressed to the congregation. Yes. And he goes on to address it to the elders and deacons. Again, this suggests that local church leadership was done and achieved through elders and deacons. Has somebody found that verse? Can you read it for us?
Paul and Timothy, servants of Yeshua the Messiah, to all the saints in Yeshua the Messiah at Philippi, together with the overseers and deacons.
Okay. This is the first time actually Paul addresses the local leadership of the church. And there is, your Bible says, overseers? Yes. Overseers and deacons. Yeah? They're together. Now, the writings of the early church fathers also help us to confirm how local congregations were led. The twofold expression, elders and deacons, is found in a number of the earliest post-apostolic writings. I'm just going to highlight 3 for us. First one is Didache. Yeah? Didache 15. And this work was in circulation in the late 1st century. And it is supposedly the teaching of the 12 apostles. That's another term that is used to refer to this writing, the teaching of the 12 apostles. And it says this, Didache 15 says this. Appoint, therefore, for yourselves bishops and deacons. And remember, we are going back to the original. And the original, elders and bishops, one in the same. Yeah? Appoint, therefore, for yourselves bishops and deacons worthy of the Lord, men meek and not lovers of money, and truthful and proved, etc., etc. That, the language of that passage is similar to what we find in 1 Timothy 3 and also in Titus 1. Yeah? So here it is in one of the earliest writings of the post-apostolic literature that actually puts elders and deacons together. Now, the reason I keep saying elders is simple. Elders has its roots in the Hebraic faith. Bishop, the term bishop, was borrowed from Greek culture. Yeah? And so I prefer to use elder. Yeah? That's the reason I'm using elder all the time. Second is written by Clement of Rome. He was a theologian, a very spiritual man, and he wrote a letter to the Corinthians around AD 96. And in 1 Clement 42:5, it says this. And this they did in new fashion. No new fashion, yes. For indeed, it had been written concerning bishops and deacons from very ancient times. For thus says the Scripture in a certain place, I will appoint their bishops in righteousness and their deacons in faith. Again, two are working together. And lastly, there's an epistle of Polycarp. And Polycarp was born in AD 69 and died around AD 155. And he says this. Wherefore, it is right to abstain from all these things, submitting yourselves to the presbyters and deacons as to Yahweh and Messiah. Yeah? So here we have evidence from the early church fathers, should we say, their writings, that supports the fact that elders and deacons work together as a unit of leadership within the local congregation. And I'm closing now. Where do we go from here? We understand that the biblical pattern for local church leadership is elders with deacons working with them, with deacons assisting them in that function. We understand that elders and deacons are appointments. Yeah. So, with that in mind, where do we go from here? As a congregation, we have always had this ethos that we will pursue truth. And as truth is opened up to us, we will follow, we will go, we will move. And if we are to be restored to the biblical pattern, this is one area that we need to make some move. Because our current situation does not reflect that. And so we need to move, make some change. First of all, change our thinking if we are to align ourselves to the biblical pattern. In this case, we are speaking about elders and deacons being responsible for the leadership of the local fellowship, the local congregation. We have to change if it's necessary. And it is necessary. We change our thinking, change the way we look at local church leadership. And in doing so, I believe the effectiveness of our service will rise. Getting this right will enable the gifts, all the gifts within the body of Messiah to function. So going forward, the leadership of our local congregations should be made up of elders and deacons working together, irrespective of the gift of grace that resides in them. Now, I'm suggesting, to help us to embrace this new order, our leadership teams should no longer be referred to as shepherding team, but local leadership team. These teams will consist of elders and deacons, and these individuals are appointed on the basis of their experience, their character, their integrity, the respect they have among the people, and their ability to lead. And we will select such leaders, and in doing so, we will look at the moral characteristics as outlined in Scriptures. They will be our guiding principle. So let me give you a hypothetical example. I'm going to just take Nottingham local congregation, yes? It's a decent-sized congregation. And actually, in recent times, well, this year, beginning of the year, a new shepherding team was brought together. I think there's 6 or so people on that team because, yeah, we're into team leadership, yes? So, the people, I believe, that are on this shepherding team, Nottingham Local Fellowship, is Beverly Nembard, David Hayes, Dasley Nicholson, Barnabas Townsend, Abigail Townsend, David Townsend. Yeah. Now, all these people have different giftings. Yeah, they have different gifts of grace, gifts that comes from the Father. Now, we want to follow the biblical pattern and have elders and deacons, yes? And we've said earlier that elders and deacons, they do have gifts of grace residing in them. So, this is hypothetical, and I don't want you to actually go away with what I have said, read this, and think, this is how it is. It's not, all right? Okay, it's just an example. We could have in this situation 3 elders and 3 deacons. Yeah, we could have Beverly as elder, David Hayes as elder, Dassel as elder, Barnabas deacon, Abigail deacon, David Townsend deacon. That's an example of how that could work. Yeah? And I think it's quite exciting, actually, because it gives everyone an opportunity to, as Paul said in 1 Timothy 3, anyone who aspires to. I can aspire to. Just because I'm not a prophet or an apostle or a pastor doesn't mean I can't aspire to being an elder or a deacon, being a part of a leadership team situation in a local congregation. I can aspire. Yeah? And I think that brings a level of excitement. Yes? Okay, currently we have people in our congregations who have been previously recognized as elders and deacons. You all put your hands up. How are you feeling? Are you thinking and wondering, what are we to do? What is to become of us? I'm saying to you, don't panic. Yeah? Don't panic. Yahweh has blessed you and used you over the years, and He will continue to use you. I think in some instances, those of us who are currently elders and deacons, we need to examine ourselves. We need to begin to look at ourselves in a different way. We need to discover what gift of grace is actually resident in us. Now, when some of you guys were recognized, I'm feeling and I'm thinking that you were recognized because you were exhibiting qualities that we looked at on that list. And that's a good thing. But I want to suggest to you that we now need to look at, what is my gift of grace? What gift of grace has Yahweh dropped into my life? And sometimes, because we can be so busy, because what we have in our heads is that I'm a deacon, so we're busy doing, we haven't actually had time to look and see if there's anything else happening there. And I'm saying it's time for us to begin to look at this point. Is there something that's in there, in me, a gift of grace that somehow has not been identified, recognized? It's important that we all know the gift that we have so that we can use it effectively. So this is work for us who have been previously recognized as elders and deacons. Let's find and discover that gift of grace that Yahweh has so kindly dropped into our lives. Let's peel back the layers of our life and discover what that is. And in saying that, I'm not saying to you that I am taking away your diaconate or your eldership. I'm not standing here today saying that. I'm standing here saying that you need to discover the gift of grace that has been planted in your life. Yeah? We need to change. We need to change. And I want to suggest to us that over the next 9 months or so, we will be working with groups to restructure our current teams so that they align with the new thinking, with the new thought, so that it aligns with the biblical pattern. Over the next 9 months or so, we want to work with leaders. Yeah. In actual fact, we want to work with ministers across the board, because it's high time that the congregation of Yahweh, with its volume of ministry, begin to do some amazing work in the kingdom of heaven. You know, Yahweh doesn't want an army of perfect ministers. He wants an army of committed ministers. And I believe that is the cry of the Father's heart. I want ministers who are not only going to say yes, but they are going to give their whole lives to it. I heard Wesley and Lisa stand here and say that they and their family, they are willing to go wherever Yahweh will take them, wherever Yahweh will want them to go. And I say, praise Yahweh for that commitment, for that thought that has been planted in their lives. But what Yahweh is looking for is a committed army of ministers who are going to say yes and walk the walk and do the thing that He is calling us to do. The congregation of Yahweh has for a number of years had a vision of spreading out across cities and towns of this land, not in huge groups or massive congregations, but in small pockets in many places across the country. That is doable if the ministers that are in this body of people will stand up with an assurance in their hearts that Yahweh has given them something to work with and to put it to work with others. It was Dassley that said to us right at the outset that ministries are to work together in an integrated fashion, so that the body of Messiah will fulfill its mission to the world. You and I cannot work on our own as islands. We need one another. It was last year, we talked about a few good people. We talked about Joshua. And what Yahweh was looking for was a few committed men and women. And He took them out of. Actually, He wheeled out those who were not committed. And He used just a few. Out of 22,000, He used 300, a few, to put to flight an army of almost 500,000. He can do it. And brothers and sisters, what we're saying over this period and what we will continue to say is that Yahweh is crying out for a committed army of ministers who will not only say yes, but will step out and walk and do together. There is nothing that this body of people cannot do when we pull together. And I want to say to us that these leaders will not rest until Yahweh's ministers are completely liberated to do and to serve to their potential. The potential that Yahweh has put in, the gift that He has dropped into your heart is for this body and it's for the world. And we have to free ourselves so that potential can come to the surface and work for this body and for the world. We need, brothers and sisters, to go beyond the yes. We need to go beyond putting our hands up and say, yes, I am this. We need to mean business. We need to stand up and shoulder to shoulder move forward and do the work that Yahweh is calling us to do. There is work to be done. And there is nothing that is impossible for our Elohim when he has a company of committed ministers. Remember, we are all ministers. Joel, you are a minister. And if you take nothing away from this feast, from your time here, you are a minister. The young people that ministered to us, they are ministers in Yahweh's house. And they need to see, and they need to feel that they are a part of a company of people who are standing and serving to their potential. Just before I came out of the house this evening, I'm going to embarrass Elliot. He knocked on my door and said, do you know Vineyard Church? So I said, yes. Have you been there? I haven't been there, but I know the church. And why are they better than us? Are they better than the congregation of Yahweh? No, they're not better than the congregation of Yahweh, and the congregation of Yahweh is not better than them. It's not about being best. It's about doing what Yahweh is calling you to do. But why do they have so many people? Why hasn't the congregation of Yahweh got lots of people? That's a good question. And I began to sort of, I got the idea that he and Pritam had been talking about the vineyard and the congregation of Yahweh and why. And I get the idea that these two people want the congregation of Yahweh to thrive, want the congregation of Yahweh to grow, want the congregation of Yahweh to multiply. And I want to say to Elliot, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to step up to the plate? And I want to say to us, older ones, are we going to be an example to the younger ones and step up to the plate and do the thing that Yahweh has been asking us to do for donkeys? And we have resisted for whatever reason. But now is the time. I heard a prophecy this evening. It's time. It's time, brothers and sisters. And I'm saying that we're not going to rest. We're going to challenge. We're going to push. We're going to press. We're going to declare. We're going to proclaim. We're going to do whatever it takes to see what Yahweh desires become a reality among us. But you have to do. We need to rethink not only local church leadership, we need to rethink ministry. It's not for the select few. It's for every single one of us. Everyone has been given a gift, and we must use it. Shavuot was a marching through. We have been affirmed, we have been confirmed. Brothers and sisters, this week has been about raising the bar of our understanding in order that we might raise the bar of our actual service. Are we prepared to step up? Are we prepared to step up? We are? Yes. Who said yes? Chris, you shouted out yes. Yeah? Okay, I'm going to do something a little bit different here. I'm going to ask you. See, there's not a lot of emotion here right now. Yeah? We're not all hyped up. We're not, yes? Yes, Yahweh's presence is here. But we've been thinking. And I want us to think. And I want us not to follow the fashion, the trend, not to follow Harry or Sally or Jim. I want you to think for yourself and to act for yourself. But in acting, you know that your brother and your sister is stepping up too. So, my question to you is, will you prove to Yahweh that the words that you've said in the past about, I will surrender, I will give, that it's true? That you will actually go beyond the words and begin to do? Christopher, you said yes. Prove that it's more than just words by standing up. You're not proving it to me, you're proving it to him. Yeah, it was John that read the scriptures yesterday. The eyes of Yahweh run to and fro the earth, seeking those whose hearts are what? Fully committed to him, in order that he might come alongside and strongly support. So, if you want to go beyond your words, Yahweh has terrific eyes, and he will see, he will come alongside. So I'm asking you to stand up if you are sort of ready to go beyond the words. Not just Chris, but whoever is prepared, willing to go beyond the words. And remember, it's not us who are looking on at you, yes? It's him. Okay, so you ready? You willing to go beyond the words? Remember, Yahweh is looking for an army of committed ministers. There's nothing that he can't do with that. Are you prepared to go and be a part of that army? Stand up. Only if. And this can be a start. You know, it's not sort of saying everybody, you need to stand up now, or you know, this is the start. I said that we will not rest. We will keep banging the drum. Yes, the Holy Spirit will keep coming at your heart and knocking at the door. But for those of you who've thought through, who have decided that I now want to go beyond the words. Yeah? Yeah. You're standing. You're standing. Okay. Now, I'm just going to call Yahweh. I'm going to call on him to be witness this day. Father Yahweh, you are amazing. There is nothing that you cannot and will not do to enable your people to rise to the heights that they need to be in order to fulfill your will and to find fulfillment for their lives. And so, Father, you are in this place. And I ask that your huge eyes will fall upon everyone who is standing before you, who have committed in their hearts to give themselves to the gift and to the ministry and to the call that you have placed in their lives. Father, I pray that you will fulfill your word, your promise, in seeing that committed heart, and that you will come alongside and stand with and support that individual, that brother, that sister. And Father, I also ask you that you would enable each one now to sense the strength and the strong cords that bind each one together in the body of Messiah, in this fellowship of ministers. Oh, Yahweh, I pray in the name of Yeshua that you will do a work now in the heart of each one who is standing before you, cementing the reality of the decision that they have made, not only in their hearts, but in heaven. And release, Father, your spirit, your power into their lives, so that they will know and appreciate the reality of what you have now done. And that every moment of every day that they will be conscious that they have said they are going beyond the yes. And empower them, Father, to live and to be and to do. Oh, Yahweh. Oh, Yahweh. In the name of Yeshua.